If someone's pitching you with a money hungry view, and I've seen this, they'll screw you too when they can, because money is all that matters. When you have someone that has integrity, they'll do the right thing.
You're listening to the Real Returns podcast, where we learn how real investments can make a real impact. Join your hosts, Andrew and Dan, as they share stories and interview business leaders on how real estate and other forms of investment can create meaningful change for individuals and communities around the world.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Real Returns podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Reichert. I've got my co-host, Dan Croce. Dan, what's happening over there today?
Hey, Andrew, I'm doing well. I'm excited for today's conversation with Zain Jaffer. He's a fascinating guy and excited to dig into his story a little bit. But I do have to admit, I'm powering through, but I'm tired today. I didn't sleep that well last night. Usually it's not a problem for me, but last night, and I was actually kind of whining about this morning to my 8-year-old daughter. And true story, she looks at me and says, "Dad, how hard can it be to sleep? I could do it with my eyes closed." And I was like,
You've always had a witty daughter.
You just gave me my dad joke for the day. Like, I guess I'm teaching you all right, but
that's awesome. Yeah. Like father, like daughter.
But hey, doing great. And like I said, excited for the conversation today with Zain Jaffer. Zain is a highly accomplished entrepreneur, investor, and a philanthropist. He's got a passion for making a difference. And today that takes the form of him investing actively out of his family office, Zain Ventures. They've got a diverse portfolio. They do have a particular focus in real estate. So excited to hear about what they're doing there, but they also invest in startups and private equity. And beyond being an active investor, Zain has a foundation where they champion causes of underrepresented individuals with things that are really near and dear to Zain's heart. So Zain, would you mind taking a moment and saying hello to our audience and maybe just give us a little bit of background of your career to date and kind of generally what you're working on these days?
Yeah, so my story starts before I was born, obviously. And my parents, both of them, were basically came to the UK, as you can tell by the accent. It's an English accent. And they came to the UK as refugees from East Africa. And they grew up in an area that wasn't great. And that translates to my experience growing up, where it was very racially segregated. I went to, I would say, one of the worst schools in the UK, and officially, at least by the inspections that the school went under, grades are really bad. And I think about with some of the people who I went to school with today have ended up, and I'm very grateful for where I am personally. The byproduct of having a chaotic environment, I would say, was that I didn't have many role models. The type of role models that we had growing up were drug dealers and bullies and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I discovered the internet at an early age. And for me, that meant learning how to code, doing some design. And I was in this other reality where I'd be online all the time and realizing, wow. And this is the day when MySpace was suddenly getting big, and I came up with so many startup concepts back then, but the primary thing I did was I figured out I could hire folks in India for $300, $400 a month back then, have them work for me full time, and then I could resell their services. And my voice broke at a very young age. So I was able to pick up the yellow pages and start calling up companies and convincing them that they need an online presence. I'd refuse to meet them, obviously. All this can be done virtually. But I got a couple of, I started making money doing that and started building a portfolio. These would be hotels that needed a website, or your local pet breeder, or someone who has a shop and wants to showcase their antiques. That's what I did growing up, and that's how I got involved with computers. And that meant that I had this entrepreneurial bug in me. I tried to launch many small companies and startups on the online space. Honestly, I had at least 10 failures, and I kept failing even though I went to university and I kept coming up with ideas there. And I ended up teaming up with another student at my university, and he was running a startup. And unfortunately, the story doesn't get better, it gets worse. Joined that startup without a salary, and turns out the other co-founder's embezzling money. So there I am, no salary, equity's worthless. But him and I kept hustling through that. And what I'm trying to say here is that it wasn't an overnight success as it may look like when you research me or you research great backgrounds. It was struggle after struggle after struggle. And we came up with an idea as mobile apps were taking off. And I thought to myself, there needs to be an advertising platform geared towards mobile apps, not mobile web, but mobile apps. And I had this idea that mobile apps with their screen are a perfect medium for TV advertisers to come across and advertise on all these apps. Back then, it was like you can get a Super Bowl audience every day by reaching people as they're playing games on their mobile phones. So I started working on that idea. And of course, like 7 years later, right, we eventually had a very big exit. We were bought for $718 million by Blackstone. So Blackstone's private equity arm, all cash. And that was in 2019. And since then, I have been investing through my family office, specifically focused on startups and real estate, and sometimes the intersection of two, which I call prop tech. And then I also have my charitable foundation on the side where we actively get involved with projects. So that's my very abbreviated history.
Wow. Zain, thank you so much for sharing. And I know we only have time for the abbreviated version, but I'm sure there's so much rich content that we could go through with your background. And one thing in particular I'm curious about, I mean, from Refugee to where you are today, you've clearly gone through a lot of adversity. And you shared some of those stories with your early schooling and having the wrong role models. How has some of that adversity that you've been through helped set you up for what you do today, particularly as you think about the companies that you invest in and some of the giving back that you're doing? How has your adversity set you up for that?
Specifically in America, I got into this incubator. For those of you who don't know what an incubator is, you come up with a startup idea, you join this program for like 3 months, and at the end of it, you have an investor demo day typically, right? Going there, I was this brown Indian kid who had a very weird accent from the UK. I didn't go to a US school. I wasn't a computer programmer, yet nearly everyone else in that cohort were of that background. And they took a real chance on me being this scrappy kid. And I realized at that point, I was the butt of all jokes in our class. I remember I was doing a practice demo day presentation and I was very nervous. I was a terrible public speaker. I started choking, and I got nervous and I didn't realize what I was saying. And I was like, can I start again? And one of the other students in the class who was part of their own, like 3-4 co-founders, took a quarter out of his pocket and threw it at me and hit me like on the face. And he was like, we'll lead your investment round. No one's going to invest in you. And that just gave me this hunger, knowing that I'm different. I have to prove myself. And we were one of the most successful startups in that class by the time it went to demo day and I was pitching our startup concept. And we ended up at that time raising a $2 million seed round, which was a huge seed round. Normally then people were raising $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. I think what it gave me was this perspective that I'm damn lucky to be where I am. And I have to work harder. I can't say I'm smart. And even if I am, that leads to overconfidence. Instead, just assume everyone else is smarter than you, okay? And be smart with how you do things, but work hard. That's the one variable I know I am going to win in. I don't remember which celebrity it was, but he said, if I'm on a treadmill next to you, I will never quit. You'll fall before I do, right? And it's that mentality where I am not going to quit. I'm going to work hard and I'm going to outwork you. Now, when you bring smarts with hard work, the stars align there, and it is amazing what you can accomplish. So that adversity that I went through and continued to go through for many years created a grit. We were known as the hustlers of Silicon Valley. Literally, the media outlets started calling my co-founder and I like the hustlers. These guys just hustle hard and they get things done. And that became our company culture. For my startup, our company mascot was the honey badger. We love that animal. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you should go Google it on YouTube and you'll see it. Honey badger don't care, it will get bitten by a snake. It'll pass out and revive itself. It'll even fight off hyena lions.
Nice. Yeah, what a great picture for the overcoming of adversity and the things you've been through, and have you used it as a springboard for where you are today. So I'm curious, as an investor, what do you look for in the companies that you're investing in? I know you mentioned real estate and prop tech and you know companies, but like, are you looking for a little bit of that grit in the founders, or how do you take what you've been through and bring that to your investments?
Oh, absolutely. If we talk about startups in particular, because it's extremely different to real estate, the way I look at real estate investment opportunities and the people behind them is like schizophrenic versus how I look at startups. So let's focus on startups for a second. The idea is probably going to change that they're pitching you. And they're going to pivot a lot, which basically means I'm going to modify my idea. It isn't working. I need to find a new customer base. So don't get too carried away on what the idea is. Instead, look at them. Is this someone who, and these values, by the way, are important in all areas, especially philanthropy, okay? Is this someone who's going to work hard and is going to have integrity? When things aren't going well, are they going to do the right thing? Is this someone who is going to be transparent with me? Is this someone who's going to continue to give me updates when things aren't going well, so I'm apprised and I'm not suddenly given bad news, which happens at least 75% of the time? Many founders are terrible at keeping their investors up to date. And that startup founders, I know it's also the case with real estate and other areas too. So absolutely, it's the person. Unfortunately, a lot of VCs are criticized for pattern matching, and they have this bias because of their background. So they may be white or they may be Indian or whatever, right? But they like to invest in what they know and they feel comfortable with and someone they can bro out with. And this is a criticism of how venture capital is.
Yep.
And that results in a lack of diversity. And it's shown in many studies that diversity, especially in business, at the boardroom in particular, when women are involved, you get much better outcomes. And I think companies don't have that hubris as much. Their egos are more checked and they achieve better financial returns as a result of that.
Yeah. Tell me about real estate.
Oh, real estate. Look, when I've been pitched by a founder, okay, they're like, so ambitious and they're giving you this vision of what it's going to become. Do not fall for that in real estate, okay? If you're listening to the seller or the agent's pitch on how this can be repositioned and how this can do so well, you are going to be taken for a ride, okay? In real estate, it's all about the numbers, the comps, the pro forma. In startups, I don't care about your spreadsheet. Your numbers are going to be so out of whack that 6 months, a year from now, you're either going to completely underperform or overperform. There's no way you should be, especially if you're investing in startups. Not like a typical safe business, right? Like a service business. We're talking high growth, high tech, high risk. Your numbers are just irrelevant. What I do care, though, is the assumptions behind your numbers, how you think through them, but more about that's how you are, not necessarily what the business can achieve, because the business is likely going to change at the early stage, especially, but also even later stage. Tech changes so much. Look at Elon Musk. Look at his companies. They're always coming out with crazy new things and they're making losses, etc. You just never know if you're a Tesla shareholder where that stock's going.
Isn't that true? Yeah, it's so funny contrasting how you think about venture investments versus real estate investments. I totally get the difference in perspective there. One, you're kind of, betting on the jockey, and the other, you're really, looking at the numbers and making an informed decision based on that due diligence. One thing I'd love to dig into a little bit is, so our podcast is all about impact investing and the impact of our investments. I'd love to hear how you think about kind of the intersection of purpose and profits, or maybe the double bottom line or triple bottom line concept. Can you talk about that in your own investing experience?
Yeah, and I have a unique approach here in a few ways, but the main frame of reference I want to provide today is that I think of impact investing as either it's through my family office. In that case, impact investing is secondary. The primary purpose here is financial returns. Or I have a charitable foundation that's set up in a tax efficient way, and I have put a lot of money into that, especially my estate and over time. That financial returns are secondary. In fact, financial returns are not even, they don't even compare to the impact it's going to make. And so I have to wear different hats. And you'll find this is common with people that come from business and have to invest in philanthropy, or run their own family office where they invest in many different areas. Think about the example I gave of investing in startups and real estate, and the person pitching you how different that is. Well, that's my approach too, actually, with my family office and my charitable foundation. So with my family office, we'll do the standard things. We'll make sure that any fund managers we invest in have ESG systems in place. We're not going to want exposure to things like weapons or tobacco or alcohol. And we have fund managers who have a system to make sure that's tracked, especially when they're trading in and out of stocks or they're investing in hedge funds. We would like to invest in areas that we think can generate huge financial returns. Conveniently, those are things like energy. So we've made quite a few investments in energy, both in private equity, but also in startups that are in that space. And fund managers who give us exposure to public market companies that have some type of environmental basis. And then there's just startups I invest in, and I want to make sure it's not just, I want to make a bunch of money. Because you know what, if someone's pitching you with a money hungry view, and I've seen this, they'll screw you too when they can. Because money is all that matters. When you have someone that has integrity, they'll do the right thing. And you can generally sense integrity, right? It's not necessarily, I'm building a high-tech startup and I'm going to give my money to charity. I don't want to hear that because, I want to hear about the business right now and my family office is here to make a return for me. But I can tell they'll do the right thing. And that's what matters, because throughout the journey, many ethical dilemmas will come up and they'll do the right thing, which is important. For my foundation, however, that's where I focus on my values. I like to donate more than invest, I would say. Donate to causes and sometimes invest in causes that I care about. I'm passionate about many areas. My last startup was focused on videos, and so I believe documentaries are a very powerful format to get a message across. So I like to invest in small filmmakers. I like to invest in also small organizations that are trying to make an impact, where I feel like I'm making an impact. I can see the pictures and the videos of where my dollars are going. And then I'll also invest in humanitarian events that happen around the world, and larger charities that have excellent corporate governance in place, where they provide a lot more transparency. So that's how I tend to think of my investing in impact, direct and indirect.
Zain, I'm curious to understand the distinction between donation and investment, particularly if it's coming out of the foundation. I imagine donation would be, what the foundation's primary activities are. But what are some instances where you might think on the charitable side, it's more appropriate to think of something as an investment as opposed to a donation?
Yeah, so investment doesn't necessarily have to be financial investment. For some of the things we do, like the documentaries, brand awareness is important. We want to build the foundation's brand over time. And so do we get inbound attention? Do we get brand awareness amongst other charities, amongst other filmmakers? So the marketing ROI for us is something we measure. Does this result in backlinks to the foundation's website, for example? Can we start to rank there? The other aspect I look at is, can this endeavor be sustainable? Can it generate some returns so that I'm not constantly having to cut a check? And can we take this to the next milestone? So for me, I want to get it off the ground, but I don't want to see it fizzle out and die and we start all over. Now I want to see more sponsors come to the table. Now I want to see distribution deals. The challenge with investing through the foundation is that compliance is so important. So I'll give you an example. One filmmaker we were investing in, they had a distribution deal lined up potentially with a very large platform. Okay, I won't say which one because it's all confidential. However, if any profit was going to go back to the distribution platform, that would make our dollars that we donated to the foundation non-tax deductible, and it wouldn't really count as a foundation donation anymore. And that's an important distinction, because when private companies get involved, that causes tremendous conflict with the mandate of what a foundation is supposed to do. You'll recall the governance issues that we also have with OpenAI, for example. Very interesting corporate structure there too, where there's a foundation charitable aspect, and then there's this for-profit initiative. And Microsoft, this big behemoth, has structured a great deal where they stand to make a lot of money and get paid back at least. When private interests are involved, when you're supposed to be donating, it causes compliance issues. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult. But Very easy if it's not necessarily a private shareholder coming in or a private entity. So not easier if it's just this foundation, for example, is going to sell things, and whatever they sell, that money goes back and goes towards their activities that are on their balance sheet that can easily be audited if needed.
Yeah, it makes sense. Zain, you've obviously accomplished so much, and now you have, you were just talking a little bit about the foundation side and your family office side. You're doing a lot of investing. I'm curious, what does the future hold for you? Like, where do you go from here? Do you have any big initiatives on the horizon? And I guess I'm curious, like, really what gets you out of bed in the morning? What's your purpose for continuing to kind of do what you're doing?
I've always been an entrepreneur at heart, and I have played around with some ideas. The thing is, I initially came from a background where money was very difficult. So financial return was very important for me when I came up with my last startup idea, way more than impact. Okay. I mean, frankly, that was a luxury to have, to think about impact. It's like, how do we make some money so I can afford a damn lawyer to get me a visa so I can stay in the US? And I've got investors here. And frankly, these venture capital investors don't want to hear about my philanthropic goals. And in my startup, I tried to push some charitable initiatives. They were met with fierce resistance, by the way, and we can talk about that later, okay? Like, let's just do what's going to make shareholders money. And this is capitalism. This is how it works, right? Now it's not like that. And now when I'm coming up with an idea, I have to check myself. Hold on. My capitalist head here is like, this is going to make a ton of money. That's not going to get me out of bed in the morning, man. When I have to like work really, really hard and stay up all night or fly across the country to do something, it's not going to be because I need more money. And I'm very lucky in that I had a big outcome. The outcome was so big that, as you know, wealth grows at a compounded rate, right? If I do nothing for like 7 to 10 years and don't touch my money, it'll double. It'll double over and over again. So running a company to make another big outcome is basically secondary. Now it's, what can I do that's going to make an impact? Well, we're having this podcast because we're all confused. What does impact mean? And I still grapple with that question every day. Like, where do I want to make my impact? How do I want to do it? And I thought it would probably be through my foundation initially, but I got quite disillusioned when I started making direct investments through my foundation, because either you're donating to large organizations and you don't necessarily see where your dollar's going. You just see it on a spreadsheet and it's going to, a certain area, right? Or you're dealing with very, very small entrepreneurs in the charity space, and their governance is a big concern. So it's been quite difficult for me. And then the other thing is, you get endless harassment from people to go to their charity dinners, and you just feel like you're someone else on their CRM to call up and get money from. So I started to experience a lot of that, and that started to make me feel like, whoa, like, I don't like the dynamic here. I'd rather do a lot of my things probably one-on-one, smaller initially, build trust. So I do want to do something more in philanthropy, but it's got to be done slowly, man. You can't rush into this. I mean, I could donate everything away tomorrow, but I don't want to do that. I want to enjoy my wealth too. I want to enjoy that and have a sustainable way. But I do want to donate more and more of my money as I age and more of my net worth into my foundation. I need to figure out, like, which organizations can I trust? Which ones will make an impact? Launching a company is still on my mind. I come up with ideas, but some of these ideas are in areas, though, that I have no knowledge of, like health tech. I really want to do something that impacts health because I'm obsessed with health, but I don't have a PhD in the area. I probably wouldn't have that much credibility if I were to start a health company because I'm a tech guy, and the joke in Silicon Valley is a lot of tech people go into health, and like those founders don't really know the market very well because it's highly regulated. And, there's a value in having like a medical degree because you learn a lot, right? So I'm just sort of living a lifestyle right now. I'm trying to figure out what to do next. I'm focusing on my health. I'm doing a lot of sports, but eventually, this old body that's aging isn't going to be able to handle the things I've thrown at. I'm doing a lot of martial arts, for example, and most people look at me like, what is someone your age doing? Like, grappling younger people, getting your arms twisted and getting your neck choked constantly, But that keeps me distracted for a while until I figure out what's next.
Yeah. Well, I love the way that you think about impact, and particularly like having a direct impact and not just being a line item on a, big nonprofit's balance sheet. I love that you're thinking about having that direct impact with the dollars that you've achieved. And honestly, just again, given some of the adversity that you've shared in your own story, that makes sense to me. Like you're trying to leave this world a better place, and it's a beautiful picture of what impact can look like. Dan's going to lead you through the lightning round. Before he does that, can you just tell me a little bit about, you said you're obsessed with health and fitness. I actually had cancer 10 years ago. So thank God I'm cancer free, but I also have a bit of an obsession with health and fitness. And I think, hopefully for our listeners, they don't just think about investments. Hopefully they're thinking about their entire being as well. So tell me a little bit about what you're thinking and doing on the health and fitness front, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I worked so hard in my teens and 20s that I had really bad blood markers, like pre-diabetic, very high cholesterol levels. I had adrenal fatigue, and I constantly, at some points, I couldn't get out of bed. If I traveled internationally, I'd have to get a massage immediately because my back would have spasms. And any workouts I tried to do, I was so pumped that I would play hard and work hard, which was a recipe for disaster. I should have been meditating and doing something lighter instead. So after my company ended, I was like, I need to recover, man. I'm broken. I look like crap. And I metabolically was crap. So I started to really learn and read about diet. I started doing lab tests very frequently. I've sort of become a little bit of a biohacker in that I'll do lab tests every month, and I'll try to understand, why is this marker what it is right now? How can I change that? And then I started reading lots of books on common illnesses that people have. I got obsessed with cancer, for example, what causes it. Then I started looking at cardiovascular issues and what is diabetes, and just reading more and more gave me that knowledge. And so much of it always comes back down to it's what you eat, it's your exercise, and it's managing stress. Genetics is an excuse sometimes. You may be predisposed to having something, but you can control that. You can reduce its impact. So yeah, that's been my thing. I've been so obsessed now. I even do something called DEXA scans, where you sit in this X-ray machine, and it scans your body, and it tells you your body fat levels, your bone mass density, and that allows me to approach my workouts in a more scientific way. I like to basically, every month to 3 months, I'll change a variable in my diet or in my supplements or in my workout style. And then I'll try to see what that does to my health results. But look, this is what happens when you bring a tech geek who loves data onto a podcast. That's my approach,
I love it. Well, we're very similar in that way. So I loved hearing a little bit of your approach there. So Dan, why don't you take us home?
Sure thing. Hey, Zain, this has been really fun getting to know your story and how you think about trying to move the needle with the capital that you've accumulated, and how you think about that in the next phase of your life. But I'd love to get you to know you, as we have just started to do, a little bit on the personal side. Tell us, and this can actually, you could take these things personally, professionally, whatever direction you'd like. What's your biggest win?
I mean, I could give you something soft about some impact I've had. The biggest thing that changed my life was selling my company, right, for $7 or $80 million. I have to accept that. That was a very big outcome, and I was very lucky to, sell the company when I did. So yeah, that was a big win. I mean, it was, and that's what I dreamed of achieving, and I did achieve it. So that counts, yeah.
Makes sense. How about your favorite movie?
Oh, I'd say Inception. I got obsessed with lucid dreaming, and I just love that movie. It makes me question reality. And sometimes people talk about, this is getting a little bit too sci-fi now, but simulated reality. Sometimes I like to think we're living in one, and something like the Inception or Matrix kind of brings that back.
Yeah. It's kind of creepy if you spend time thinking about it. But what is your favorite food? And I would expect you to not say pizza and French fries based on the conversation we just had.
Oh, I know it varies. I can enjoy fast food as long as I, contain it. I'm not one of those people that I don't want to mention a specific diet here to risk offending any people, but I believe you should eat everything in moderation and enjoy life, unless you have an immune system disorder or something. For me right now, it's Chinese hot pot, like a seafood hot pot. I love that. I'm craving that. It's just yummy.
It sounds great.
Oh, I love it. I love those complex flavors. Yeah. What's a growth edge for you today? What's a way that personally or professionally you're trying to get better?
I speed read. I can digest a lot of information very quickly by the way I've trained my eyes to scan through a book, and it keeps me focused because I'm constantly moving, but it allows me to digest a lot of information and read articles, especially books, at a very quick rate, like, multiple times faster than we currently read, which is, I think, a mistake the way we all read. We literally read word by word and we listen to the voice in our head. Instead, you should be able to scan through quickly and just let it sink in. It works once you try that. Big growth hack in my view. By the way,
Wow.
Bill Gates, Elon Musk, all Jeff Bezos, these guys are ferocious readers and they can also speed read. They can digest things very quickly and they have to.
Fascinating. I have to look into that. And then along those lines, what is some A+ content you're taking in these days? Yeah, that could be a book. Yeah, it could be books or podcasts, but maybe 7 books a day if you're speed reading.
I like to read different types of books, but biographies are just so impactful. Currently, I've just started reading the book on LeBron James and his childhood, his story. I see so many parallels every time I read a biography. Often people's adversities really create character later on in life, and they use that to achieve things.
So cool. And then lastly, how can our listeners follow you or get in touch with you or connect with you moving forward?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Zain Jaffer. That's sometimes where I publish some insights. And I do check my emails. So yeah, that's the best way to reach me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Zain. It was great having you on the show. I loved hearing just your story, from the adversity you've been through to selling a company for $780 million. Such an incredible win. You should be so proud of yourself, something that very few people in the world ever accomplish. And, from coming from where you are to getting there is a huge accomplishment, but also just how you think of impact now that you have, somewhat arrived, the way that you think about impact through your foundation, through your family office, and through your investments. You're not happy settling for just donating to being a line item in a large nonprofit organization. You want to have direct impact on individuals and on companies and on this world. So thank you so much for being on the show. And yeah, it was great having you.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciated the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Real Returns podcast. We hope that you learned something new about how you can invest to make a lasting impact on those around you. Please be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you listen to your podcasts, leave us a review, and share about us on social media. We hope you will join us for our next episode, where we will be continuing the conversation around impactful real estate investing.